So this is our topic for this afternoon, BJT and FET, frequency response, or amplifier frequency response. If I may, I'd like to read the introduction sa chapter 9. The analysis thus far has been limited to a particular frequency. Or basically, wala na to i-consider gyud ang frequency sa signal. For the amplifier, it was a frequency that normally permitted ignoring the effects of capacitive elements. Ignoring the effects of capacitive elements, no? If you remember, sa atong mong pag-analyze sa amplifiers previously, like for example, this one, the voltage divider amplifier, remember, na atong gina-ignore ni, right? Kaning mga components. Ang capacitors, this one, the coupling capacitors and the bypass capacitors. Ato na sang gipag-ignore. Actually, replace na to og short na wire lang, no? As if it doesn't exist. Because we assume that the frequency of the signal na gi-produce sa atong source is passable, no? Mo pass through without any effects to the amplifier, through the amplifier. Reducing the analysis to one that includes only resistive elements and sources of the independent and controlled variety. We will now investigate the frequency effects introduced by a larger capacitive elements of the network at low frequency and smaller capacitive elements of active devices at high frequency. Because the analysis will extend to a wide frequency range, the logarithmic scale will be defined and used throughout the analysis. In addition, because industry typically uses a decibel scale on its frequency plots, the concept of the decibel is introduced also. The similarities between the frequency response of both BJT and FET permit the coverage of both topics in the same chapter. So the same with learning any other topic, no? Or basically the same with learning with any other topic. First, atong i-learn ang language, no? Language sa kanang topic, no? Example, learn tag biology, no? Dagan kayong mga terms and vocabulary ang biology dapat aware ta, no? Before knowing, no, and learning biology, for example. So the same gapon sa electronics engineering, we've gone through different terms, especially in the previous semester, like diodes, electronic devices, no? Diodes, transistors, CMOS, amplifiers, gains, right? Impedances. So atong basically magdungagan pa nato ang atong vocabulary, no? With more practical terms, no? And kaning mga terms, even though general man ni siya sa tanan nga subtopic sa electronics engineering, but most common nato sila ma-observe sa communications, no? Or communications engineering or electronic communication systems. The same sa atong practical example earlier, no? Sa equalizer. Okay. So sa ako So frequency response. What is frequency response? That's also a term you should be familiar with, no? Before, we ignored the frequency of our source. Okay, atong gi-assume na say for example, this is our amplifier, no? Dili man nato nga part na connect ang load, right? And dili ang source. Basically, this is RL and this is RS. Ang last na itong topic is say effects sa RS and RL sa amplifier, whether BJT or FET. And ang i-connect sa RS is the signal source, no? VS. We ignored the frequency of the signal source because assuming na whatever signal nga i-produce atong source, ipapass through sa amplifier. But practically, it's not like that, no? Most useful devices in electronics only pass through specific frequencies of a signal, no? So dili siya, although there's a such thing as an all pass na device, ini ipapass through niya ng frequency, but na lang siya mo lang to yung purpose, no? Mo lang to yung specific na use. But again, most useful devices electronics only pass through a set of frequency of a particular signal. And where does this depend? No? Asa ga depend ang i-pass through ng frequency sa atong device. Okay? Although most probably next meeting pa nato ni pa-discuss in detail, but ako lang isutdaan karon that the frequency response of an amplifier basically, pero ang frequency response is ma-apply po na sa tanang klase nga devices, sa dili na siya sa amplifier. Siguro ang pag-learn lang sa frequency response is i-apply na to sa amplifier this afternoon or even sa electronics too. Pero frequency response can be applied to any electronic system, electronic devices or circuits. But for amplifiers, frequency response depends on capacitive elements, no? And nothing else. Capacitive elements, no? Mga capacitors, external capacitors. So there are external capacitors like the coupling capacitors na atong na observe sa atong